Thanks for clicking on, and welcome to Obscure Victories Gaming and the NCAA Football Slow Burn Dynasty series. In this Slow Burn Dynasty career mode, I'm going to build a dynasty in the most realistic, logical way the game allows. I'm going to do this by following recruiting and gameplay guidelines. On top of that, I'm going to dive deep into the process of building a team and the decisions involved. I'll use depth charts and an actual recruiting strategy to help optimize my recruiting. I'll also dive deep into the scouting, game planning, and X's and O's. So, if you're someone who enjoys the process of building toward better, I'd love it if you followed along. Alright, so to get this dynasty started, we are simulating 5 seasons in. We're just going to start with all new players. And at the end of the 5 seasons, we're going to take over one of the worst teams in college football. The 2 main guidelines I'm looking for in taking over a team, they have to be a 1-star school, and they're in a group of 5 conference. So to get the dynasty started, I'm taking over Alabama. Nick Saban's not going to get fired within 5 years. At the end of those 5 years, we'll take a look at the college landscape, see who the bottom feeders are, check out some of the 1-star schools, and see what ones we want to take over. All right, we made it through 5 seasons. Let's just kind of check out the college landscape and kind of see some award winners, and then we'll get into which teams kind of fit our bill and which one we'll take over. All right, so a quick look at the top 25. Looks like a lot of the familiar faces we see up there. All right, now comes the moment of truth. We'll check out the championship contenders. We're going to sort them by rank, kind of throughout the 4 seasons, the next coming 4 seasons. We'll rank them by grade, and we'll kind of see which ones, again, fit our criteria. They got to be a 1-star, and they've got to be in a group of 5 conference. All right, so as we look through kind of the bottom 10 teams or so, a couple are jumping out to me. Utah State and New Mexico, I think, just because of, again, their grade as a D-. They're both in the group of 5 conferences, and they're both ranked 79 overall. But as 2020 arrives, they're both within the top 5 or the bottom 5 overall, which means their freshman class that they just got isn't that good, which leaves us a lot of work to do. All right, now that we have our school, we're going to create our coach at the end of this 5th year. We'll wrap up the recruiting cycle for this season for the previous coach, and then we'll get to start fresh in the off season recruiting our own guys. We're going to call our coach Episelva Voitot. That in Finnish, that means obscure victories. Probably a loose translation, but we're going to go with Episelva Voitot. Our offensive playbook is going to be spread offense, kind of based on the Auburn spread, I believe, with some wing bone, flex bone, and some power run game mixed in there as well. Our defensive one says multiple. I'm going to switch that to 4-2-5, along with every other defensive formation we can get in there, as many as we can. All right, so let's thank Nick Saban for his service of getting us through those 5 seasons without getting fired. We're going to make him a computer-controlled coach, and Episelva will be our only coach going forward. All right, one of our guidelines going forward is our coaching progression. So every time we go up a level, we have to alternate between the game management and the recruiting aspect of our head coach. So we're starting with 6 head coach points right now, 3 for offensive and 3 for defensive coordinators. All right, so I'm going to put 1 point into Road Warrior and then 2 points into the anti-freeze skill for our kicker. And then for recruiting, I'm putting all 3 points into the locksmith skill. We're not going to do any scouting, just the scouting that you get, right after you put them on your board that first week of off-season recruiting. So that will be the last skill I think that we upgrade in our recruiting. I just like to get the surprise of what the player is afterwards. All right, now we got our coaching staff set. let's wrap up this season and let's take a quick look at some of the players leaving. See if we're losing any big-time players. Nothing too harmful, it looks like. Maybe our kicker. Next, we got to take a look at any transfers coming in. Nope, nobody wants to come to New Mexico. Hopefully we can change that. All right, next we're going to take at the recruits that the previous coaching staff had on their board. We're going to see what we can clean up. Hopefully get something, salvageable coming into our first season, and then set a good base for moving forward next year. So it looks like we have 2 really good players that they had on their board. That hopefully we can get Jay Dukes, a halfback, and then Mike Wells, a tight end. So we're going to put all our points into them and just offer some scholarships to some of the lower guys. All right, let's advance and see who we signed. All right, so we did get Jay and Mike. That's pretty big for us. Missed out on some wide receivers that might hurt. Got a decent D tackle, decent wide receiver it looks like, and some lower level guys. So not bad for wrapping up another coach's recruiting class, and sets a good base for going forward next year. Let's quick check and see where we ended up as far as top classes here. Okay, 70th. Not as bad as I thought maybe heading into our first year. 2 4-stars, those guys are huge. Huge gets for us. A couple 3 stars, 2 stars, and a lot of 1 stars. But again, a good foundation for heading into next year. All right, no drastic position changes, so let's move on. All right, let's quick check out the training results. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I might actually just fast forward it in editing, but hopefully you guys can see how everybody did training-wise. Okay, let's jump into cutting some players here. We may not have to cut that many, but we are just going to kind of trim some of the lower level guys here, get that roster size down, and then hopefully the recruiting class we bring in next year can just add to what we have, and we don't have to cut that many. Okay, after trimming our roster, that brings us to our next guideline. Conference-wise, we are going to be an independent. We're going to play a schedule that has at least 6 ranked opponents, and we cannot move out of independence until we win 2 consecutive bowl games. That's the idea anyway. We'll kind of see how that plays out. But being an independent is going to allow us to set a tough schedule and play our rivalry games. I'm also going to add teams to each conference, so each conference is going to have a championship game. I just like the idea of conference championship games, and that way no matter what conference we end up going into, we'll have the ability to play for a conference championship. All right, now that our conferences are set, let's jump ahead to the preseason. All right, next I'd like to dive into the schedule. Again, we're an independent, so we can kind of set our schedule as we like. We're going to start with all of our rivalry games right off the bat. So weeks 1 through 4, all rivalry games. Then we dive into ranked opponents, Cincinnati, Bama, Oklahoma. Then we get a bye in week 8. Take on Rice in 9, then Notre Dame, Missouri, Northwestern, California. And then week 14 is a bye. Again, the idea is to build a really tough schedule. We've got all of our rivalry games, which we're going to have different sliders for. We're going to have different sliders for games against ranked opponents. And it's going to be really difficult to come away with 6 wins in this schedule. All right, next step is to get in and redshirt some players. I'm just going to probably speed this up in editing so you can kind of see who we redshirt. After we redshirt, we got to get into our depth chart, make sure everything looks good, make sure there's nothing funky going on. I like to make sure that if I have 2 left tackles. I like them to be 1 and 2. I try not to throw in, a left guard in there, just so that left tackle can get experience as a backup. Now, if my starter gets injured, I will flip in the best player possible. All right, depth chart is set. Now we get into recruiting. So recruiting is going to have probably the most guidelines in this dynasty. First thing is we can only recruit within our region. So the proximity to home has to be B-. If there is somebody who is interested in our team right off the bat, we can recruit them. Second guideline is they have to be below 65 if they're not interested in us. So if we've got a running back like we had last year who was 74 and they're interested, we can recruit them. But anybody we go after outside of who's interested has to be 65 or lower. The only exception is players that are within our state. So players in New Mexico, we can go after any one of them. I'm guessing there might not be a lot of 5 or 4 stars available in New Mexico, but if there is, we can go after them. If we jump into, say, Nevada and try to look for guys who aren't interested in us, they have to be 65 or lower. We can get 1 3-star junior college player, and we can take 2 and 1-star junior college players to fill our board as well. Now, after week 8, now we can expand outside of our region and start targeting players maybe on the East Coast, maybe somewhere up in the Midwest, or out in the Northwest. But that's only after week 8. So that's when we'll go after those typical low lock guys who aren't being recruited. But again, they have to be 65 or lower. And remember, we're not scouting, so we don't know what their actual overall is. They may be a bust, they may be a gem, but their starting point has to be 65. Obviously, if they are a JUCO player, sophomore, junior, their ranking is not as important. All right, so after following all the guidelines, here's a quick look at the 35 players I've added to our recruiting board. All right, now that our recruiting board is full, our off-season or preseason is finished up, the next thing to do is to jump into week 1 and take on UTEP. Thanks for watching, guys.